So in the first video, you saw how to graph a quadratic inequality, which is just a quadratic function. And instead of an equal sign, it has a less than or greater than, or less than or equal to, greater than or equal to sign. So you saw the steps on how to plot the graphs of inequalities. So same steps as just drawing your parabola, except you have to pay attention to if it should be a solid line or a dotted line, and then also if you should shade under the parabola or over the parabola. So now what we're going to look at is graphing a system of quadratic inequalities. Now in Algebra 1, you graphed system of linear inequalities. So those were lines that had shaded areas underneath them. And what you were looking for was the shaded areas that overlapped. That's the same exact thing we're doing here, except instead of straight lines, we're going to have parabolas. So our steps to graph a system of quadratic inequalities, we're just going to graph each one of these individually. So following the same steps that you took in your notes before. So let's go through. What I'm going to do is kind of do a rough plot of what they look like here and then show you the actual graphs in a second so you can see what they look like. So here with inequality 1, remember the first thing we have to do is find the vertex and the axis of symmetry. So remember we use negative b over 2a in order to find that. So in this case, because there is no b value, that means b is equal to 0. So in this case, our axis of symmetry is going to be at x equals 0. And to find the y value of our vertex, we just plug in 0. So we plug in 0 for x, and we get y equals 3. So we know that our vertex is going to be at 0, 3. So right here. Now, we know that this graph is going to open downwards because of the negative sign right here. So our graph is going to be a parabola. Now we also need to find 2 points. So if we plug in 1 for x, we get negative 1 plus 3, we get 2. So if we plug in 1, and that means if we plug in negative 1, we also get 2. So we get this parabola that kind of goes down like this. Okay, again, I'm sketching this right now, so the lines are a little crooked, but you can get the general picture of it. Now, in this one, because this is a less than and not less than or equal to, what we need to do is we would have a dotted line. So let me just redraw that with a dotted line here. So again, we've got our points right here. And instead of a solid line, this would be dashed. Okay, so you get an idea of what this parabola looks like right here. All right, so that's equation 1. Now, here we see that y is less than, so y is less than our quadratic, so that means we're shading under. And to confirm that, if we plug in a point, let's just pick the origin right here. So that's 0, 0. If we plug 0 in for x and y, we get 0 is less than 3, which is true. So that means that this is in fact our solution area, our solution set. So equation 1 is a parabola that's graphed like this. Now, let's look at, in blue, I'll do equation number 2. So remember, again, our vertex is negative b over 2a. So negative 2 over 2 times 1, that gives us negative 1. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals negative 1. So that's going to be right here. And when we plug in negative 1, we get 1 minus 2. So negative 1 minus 3. So we get 2, 3, 4. We get right here. Negative 1, comma, negative 4 for our vertex. Now, in this case, we know that this is a parabola that opens up because it's positive. So our parabola is going to look like this. And again, we can just plug in a value. If we plug in 0 for x, we get -3. So we know that we've got a point there, and that means we have another point right here. Now, because this is greater than and equal to, we know that this is going to be a solid line that goes through right like this. Solid line right like that. Now, if we shade, again, we know that this is y is greater than, so we're going to be shading above our parabola. To confirm, again, let's pick a point. Let's pick a point in that area, which is the origin. So if we plug in 0 for y and 0 for x, we get 0 is greater than or equal to -3, which is true. So we know that our shaded area is going to be this area above our parabola right here. Okay, so that gives us we've got our two graphs right here. Now, what I want to do in purple, so you can see it, we look at this area that is double shaded. So the part of our graph that has been shaded by both and covered by both of our graphs. So this right here becomes our actual solution set, this part of the graph that is shaded. Okay, now notice it's just the part that is overlapped by both. So what I want to do, I wanted to go through these steps to show you actually graphing both of these. Let's go look at the nice graph of both of them. So here we have our two parabolas. Okay, we have equation inequality 1. Okay, that's our red graph that's opening down, and inequality 2, our blue one that's opening up. This double shaded region right here is our solution set. So this purple region, that's the graph of the system. Okay, again, the graph of the system is just the double overlap set, and it includes everything from this blue line, the blue parabola, all the way to the dotted red line, all the way back over. That point of intersection would be your solution. Okay, so that's how you graph a system of quadratic inequalities. Remember, it's just like you saw in the first video, it's just following those steps for each inequality that you have. So what I'm going to do right now, I want you to go ahead and look at the questions here and go ahead and answer the questions that pop up now in the text box.